if I'm honest, and it has to be said, the reason we're all here is because of students, and there's end of. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Welcome to Of Galway for the World, the podcast that brings you inspiring stories and ideas from Galway's vibrant global community.
Brought to you by Global Galway, the University of Galway dedicated office to connecting students, staff, and partners around the world, fostering international collaboration, opportunities, and support.
Join us as we explore how Galway is making an impact far beyond its borders, right here from Galway for the world. I'm Corey, and today we're exploring belonging, what it truly means to feel part of the University of Galway's community and beyond.
And I'm Phuong.
We're joined by Professor David Byrne, the new president of the university, who brings a vision grounded in inclusion, connection, and shared purpose. Let's hear his thoughts on how Galway embraces students, staff, and partners from around the world.
Hello, thank you for joining us, Professor David Byrne.
You're very welcome. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah, let's start with a quick hello. Can you introduce yourself to our audience? Where are you from and what brought you here to Galway and the university?
Yes, so I started here on the 8th of September, so been here only a few months, and I came from Newcastle upon Tyne in the northeast of England, which is where my parents were both from. But I'm married to an Irish person. She's from County Limerick, and so I've been coming back and forward to Ireland for around 36 years now. So I'm no stranger to the country or the culture. During that time, I spent several visits up in Galway, both visiting as a tourist, but also doing some professional engagements as well, because I'm a neurologist by background. And so I'd been asked to do some various talks on my area of movement disorders and Parkinson's in particular. So I've had quite a long-standing connection with the university, or rather the place. And then when the university job came up, it was too good an opportunity to resist to have a go for it. So that's it all worked out well. At least I think it did. And so here I am in my first 3 months just over.
Oh, you've been here for just like 3 months. How are your life settling here?
Yes, we're settling in nicely. Obviously, the theme of the podcast on belonging is very fitting for me, I think. It's been an interesting time. I think one of the phrases I read in a book is like drinking from a fire hose, because there's a lot to take in, and that's not referring to the weather, of course, here in Galway. But no, we've got a roof over our heads, and you can't ask for more than that in this current day and age. And we've been given a very warm welcome by the community, both staff and students, and that's hugely appreciated. We've got some really great people in the university, that's absolutely clear, and I think everybody wants to do well for the place as well. So it's been an invigorating 3 months.
So one of the University of Galway's core values is belonging. From the strategic plan, the university strives to create an environment where students, staff, and alumni feel welcomed, supported, connected, and valued as an integral part of a community of learning that fosters academic engagement, professional development, and personal growth, health, and well-being. So belonging is important, especially with an international community. And as we're talking to potential international students and families here, what does belonging mean to you in the context of international students and that kind of diversity of the student body that we bring here?
Yes, it's a really important concept, and it's one that I'm familiar with actually from my previous job in Newcastle, actually, where I ran the medical faculty. We obviously had a number of international students in that faculty as well. Belonging is a sense to me of where an international student really feels that they're part of a place, that they don't feel that they're an outlier, that they feel integrated into the fabric, both of the institution, but more importantly of the community that they inhabit, and that they feel comfortable, that they feel they can express themselves, and that they don't feel inhibited in any way, or worse still, threatened in any way.
Exactly.
And we know that Galway is, incredibly diverse with a bilingual campus, right? So how did you feel that kind of like sense of belonging feel like and look like in everyday university life here?
Yes, it's a great question. It's hard not to personalize that. I also try and see it very much through the lens of an international student because we, I mean, in awe a lot of the time of the capabilities of our international students and how they adapt language-wise to a language which is not their first language. Coming from the UK, we're particularly bad, I think, at times at languages, if I'm honest, and tend to adopt a very arrogant approach that everybody should speak English. And I think that international students coming into University of Galway obviously are grappling, some cases, to speak English and to get on with their courses, which are primarily in English, but not all. And then, of course, they have the bilinguality aspect as well with Irish. I would think most of them, I would like to think, embrace that as a positive, the bilingual nature of the campus. I certainly have done that. I'm personally learning to speak Irish, and will need to try and step that up in the new year. But I've been trying to do conferments and some other engagements, at least topping and tailing in Irish. And I love the language. I've always loved languages. So I hope that the international students would take a similar view, that it's a value added, if you like. It helps them link with the culture, and I think that in that sense it should be regarded as a positive. But I do accept, as I say, that the bandwidth that they have whilst maybe working on a course in physics, for example, whilst trying to learn English at the same time to a greater level, the Irish may be something that will have to come along at a slightly later stage.
So you mentioned that they're trying to juggle these, these different things, these balance of learning this language and taking these courses. What are some of the supports that you see around the university that kind of help international students with that?
Yes, I mean, there's obviously, I'm very proud of the support that we give our student population in general, and I know that that has been ramped up quite considerably in recent years, and it needed to be. I think in terms of the language support, there is clearly language support available for international students in English and in Irish as well, and different levels of classes that can be enrolled in, as well as online, etc., etc. So, I mean, I've enrolled myself for a beginner's conversational Irish class, for example, and I think that the main thing is, and this is a general theme throughout, I would hate to think of any international student struggling silently. And I think that the most important thing is to not be too proud to admit, or even frightened to admit, if you are having problems, to reach out to somebody, be it a tutor or some body, that a teacher, a lecturer, that they can relate to, just to say, look, I'm having some problems here, and to be signposted to the right resource if required.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think we also know that creativity is one of the key, core strength pillar of the University of Galway here. So how do you think like the creative practice in art or research or teaching can really foster the sense of belonging for the student and staff here?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think, well, I like to think of learning. The best way I can probably answer that is that creativity is not a one-way process. It's a bi-directional or multi-directional process. And I think the answer I was going to actually give before, or part of an answer I was going to give before, is there's some really strong evidence that inclusive organizations are stronger organizations, because we learn from the diversity, we learn from people coming in from different backgrounds. And I think that's the same towards creativity, that it's not a case of, I know all the answers, here's how you create something. It's a case of trying to get perspectives from people and to allow them to feed into the mix. And sometimes you're then taken to a place you couldn't imagine going, because you're getting a perspective from somebody that you've maybe never had yourself. And so I think all of us, we all need to be open to that. And then it kind of creates a crucible, like a reaction that, amazing things can happen from that chemistry.
Yeah, I like it when you touch upon inclusion, because I know that you have led big change project that promote inclusion diversity before, right? So I'm wondering how is that kind of experience shape the way that you are fostering belonging here in our university?
Yes, I mean, I think that I've often said that the measure of success of a really good equality, diversity, and inclusion program is that you don't need a vice president of equality, diversity, and inclusion because it's effectively into our DNA. You know, we all think that way. We don't need to be reminded. But obviously, being realistic, we're a long way from that. And we're very fortunate in this university as having an absolutely outstanding vice president in Edie and I. And I've had a lot of dealings with Helen thus far in many different contexts. And we are truly fortunate to have her. I think that the whole agenda is it's complicated. Clearly it is. But I think the fundamentals are pretty straightforward and simple. And I think that idea of inclusivity, that idea of fostering the sense of belonging so that everybody, regardless of their background, feels welcome and not threatened is a basic premise.
I love that. I want to go back to something you said earlier when you were mentioning your specialty in neurology and movement disorders, especially Parkinson's. What are some of the things that, like easy things that any university might be able to do, for instance, to make something or a place more accessible or create a sense of belonging for someone with movement disorders?
Oh, wow. So I think you're referring really down to the mechanics of access, is that?
Yeah, like I mean, are there things about accessibility or like easy things that universities can do? No promises, obviously, with anything here, but what are some of the things that you understand about the community of people with movement disorders that might make it easier?
Yes. I mean, I would say that the majority of the patients that I've previously saw were older patients, and they clearly sometimes had multiple conditions other than, say, Parkinson's disease, which was the dominant condition that I used to see, but not by no means the only one. I think the main thing, and this is probably something that would be a more general response, is you should never assume anything. You should never jump to conclusions. So, for example, people with Parkinson's, or indeed any movement disorder that may be more relevant in a younger person, sometimes it goes beyond what you can just see. So I'll illustrate that by saying that sometimes in the patients with Parkinson's, the most dominating and distressing symptoms were actually what we call non-motor symptoms. So in other words, it's not what you saw, it's not the tremor, it's not the slowness of movement, it's the fact that that person was suffering with terrible anxiety or depression. And you can't see that from the outside, so you can't assume that they don't have those problems. And so again, I think it boils down to partnership. And I'm a great believer in partnership working at every level. And so the way that it's shifted and has shifted across the world, really, in the sort of movement disorder world, is to put the patient very much at the center of things, to try to inform the medical staff and all the related staff what the really important issues are. And so the parallel across to students is very easy to draw, that we have students now who have a range of neurodiversity issues, which you can't see from the outside, so you can't assume anything, as well as the more overt mobility issues, which might be more obvious, but again, not always. So it's back down to that sort of partnership working, trying to highlight where there are deficiencies and issues, trying to work together to address those issues in as practical a way as can be done.
I love that. Yeah, and you're right. It does echo across the student body in different ways. Putting that student first is
Yes.
incredible.
Absolutely. Well, if I'm honest, and it has to be said, the reason we're all here is because of students, and there's end of. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Absolutely. And from what I've seen so far, the university has welcoming and accessible places. I know I've had fellow students who have come in with either neurological differences or movement capability differences, and they've all spoken to the university spaces as being welcoming and accessible.
That's very good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think what you just show that like inclusion and diversity and belongings are, closely linked to one another, right? And now I want to zoom out a little bit because we are a global campus. So I'm curious, what are our key visions for internationalization between now and 2030? Can you share with us about that?
Yes, well, I'm not going to let the cat out the bag because actually the global strategy is being compiled as we speak, and we've had some inkling through workshops of the way in the general direction that might be taking. Um, I think it's fair to say that let's be honest, we all benefit from having international students at lots of different levels, and I think that international students would probably be the first to admit that it's actually good to have a range of international students from a range of different countries in a range of different subjects. And sometimes the way that things tend to work is that you tend to have an uneven distribution. So, at the moment, we know there are three areas of the world where we are drawing a lot of our international students from, and that's fantastic. And that obviously a number of those students are going into a relatively smaller number of courses. So I think it would be really helpful in lots of ways for everyone if we were able to be even more diverse, both if across the countries that we're recruiting from, but also to the courses that the students are coming into as well. I think that would benefit everybody, to be honest. So that's certainly one thing. I think, again, the whole global agenda, it's kind of it's a two-way street again. I'm using that parallel a lot. I mean, we're talking about bringing students here to the campus, and that's really important, giving them a fantastic experience and making them feel, wow, I really enjoyed my time in Galway. I would love to stay here or go on to do a master's or whatever, or a PhD. And that's fantastic. We're also within that trying to give more, say, home students the chance to travel out and broaden the mind, and also offer inward experience for students who might want to come and spend a period of time at the university before returning to their home base. So there are other important facets. And then the final element is those kind of outward building, outward reaching relationships that really would be an important part of the strategy, where you're looking to say, at one level, it would be research collaborations where you're wanting to link in with good institutions around the world, not just in Europe. That's really important. But also there's that kind of ambassadorial role that I would like to see both staff and students take, whereby they would be invited to give a talk, for example, but they would have an opportunity to, for example, highlight the 4 pillars of strength that we have in this university, just to get us on message, because the more we can do that and be consistent in our ambassadorial roles, if you like, then the more we're likely to get a consistent message to the academic community, and that in turn will pay dividends with regard to things like reputation and rankings.
So speaking of those academic collaborations, you recently signed an agreement to join the university into a global coalition of Ukrainian studies.
Yeah.
It's about the University of Galway makes this a good partnership with the with Ukraine.
Yes, well, we were that was quite a highlight, I have to say, of my last three months, to be in Dublin last Tuesday and to sign that with First Lady Zelenska. It was an honour, and she's a remarkable woman. I think that Ukraine are being very forward thinking in terms of how they're looking to rebuild going forward. And I think that they are looking to try to um, link in with Irish and obviously global universities in areas of strength to those universities that could give value added to Ukraine and Ukrainian students, not just with the students coming obviously to this country, which we've been very proud and happy to take, and they're wonderful people, wonderful students, but also in the future when the students are then returning, hopefully they will then have peace, they will be able to rebuild their country in an informed way. So from our side, I was accompanied by Tom Fell and very much in the journalism space and media space, and we were able to highlight one or two examples, very powerful examples, where students have highlighting various issues, for example, in Mariupol, a well-known local documentary that was produced through this university and one of its students, as I understand it. And we're very proud of that. So the links were different through the different universities. And I think they're trying, my understanding is that they're trying to look for sort of synergies and benefits that would help Ukraine on a wider platform. And they've been remarkably successful in getting many universities across the globe to sign up to this initiative.
Well, that's fantastic. And I'm glad the University of Galway can help lead the way with those kinds of partnerships.
Absolutely.
Yep. And I think apart from articulating the four key strands of the university, you have also set out a vision for a AI augmented like digital pathway for the student here at the university, right? So I'm wondering how that kind of vision would take part in like fostering the belonging here, maybe in like East Bay or something.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I thought so. I'll give you the utopian vision. That's probably the best thing, isn't it? So I mean, the onboarding, the recruitment of students is a really interesting and challenging process. Actually, I mean, there's a lot of competition out there. Obviously, we know universities are very keen to court international students. And so that sense of making them feel when they put an application in, I mean, the ideal would be to have an alumnus ambassador, somebody who's in the country, who's been through the university, who contacts a student because they've expressed some interest to the university and they say, look, we had a great time, etc., etc., really recommend this. And then the student would put the application in. The idea of the AI pathway, in a nutshell, is to try and give them the student a bespoke journey that's really personal to them, right from that point of first contact, right the way through their time at the university, and then beyond as an alumnus, to perhaps say customize the type of ongoing learning that they might be offered because of the course that they did or the job that they might have taken on. So the initial phase, if you like, of coming to the university, it's not just a case of thank you very much, you've paid your deposit. Now let us know what your decision is near the time. It could be around, we thought you might be interested in this. This is something that you've expressed an interest in as a hobby. This is a sport you're interested in. Look at what we've just done in the World Rowing Championships or something like that, to make them feel, wow, they know a bit about me. This is really special. And this is not what my next door neighbor got. They got something different because it's special and bespoke to them. So that feeling of belonging, if you like, starts before they even come to the university. And then you could end up with the AI pathway then giving, once they're in the university, a kind of offering of support packages, of buddying, of all sorts of bespoke, again, offers of maybe students who are already here, who've come from similar backgrounds, of signposting certain, say, language support, which we talked about earlier, if that is potentially an issue. So you're getting the drift of the AI takes all of the kind of dotting the dots and wiring the wires together. It does it automatically. As we all know, the power of AI is awesome, and probably beyond our imagination, and right the way through to their qualification. Now, there could even be in-flight adjustment as well, though, for example, there may be some issues, maybe for whatever reason, student might struggle. And again, the AI would kick in to kind of direct the student to greater support areas, and flag up to tutors and people who need to know whether that person might need a little bit more contact time, a little bit more help and support to get them through the transition of year to year.
Yeah, I like it like when the university is using technology and also AI to support the student. And personally, I also have the experience with our career service center who use like AI to support with the CV screening process as well. So that's how like they create a kind of like sense of belonging here to the market, not just like the university.
Exactly. Yeah, it gets you more marketable as well. I've used that service as well.
Excellent.
So you were born in England and your wife is Irish, and your career has obviously taken you to a different country now. So what qualities do you tend to look for abroad to gain a sense of belonging?
So you must remember, I was pretty well born and bred Northeast England. So, I mean, I've, in a way, I think my wife in particular can't believe how I've managed to sort of literally up sticks from Newcastle and move over to the west coast of Ireland without any kind of withdrawal symptoms, because yes, I travelled whilst I was training and went down to London and spent a number of years actually in London, and my preclinical was at Oxford University. So it's not that I hadn't been out of Newcastle, but I was very much part of the furniture there. I'd done a lot of my leadership roles, etc., had all been done in Newcastle upon Tyne. So I was very much the home brigade, if you like, in that sense. But I saw the challenges, as I mentioned before, about international students and that sense of belonging. I will just draw one further, if I may, on the belonging aspect, which was something that stuck with me. And that is that there's often been the push to try to get bigger classes of students because obviously, for obvious reasons, that always helps in terms of economy of teaching, I suppose, but also it clearly, let's not beat about the bush, it would help with the income to the university as well. But there is a sweet spot on the size of a class, and I'm a firm believer in that. And we had a particular course in my faculty where we'd kind of gone to a point where it was the class size, the year size was so large that the students were reporting, and these were primarily home students, I have to add, that they were not feeling a sense of belonging because of the class size had depersonalized things a lot, and that they felt that they didn't have an accessibly sized group that they could kind of relate to. Well, I think if you think about that for a moment, it does make perfect sense. And so the answer to that was actually to break the class size down into different streams so that it gave a sense of belonging with smaller group sizes within the year. So I use that as an example that these challenges of belonging, which I have encountered in my previous existence, they're not always international student related. It can occur on home students, and we have to safeguard against that as well.
Well, I mean, we've seen that in our own classes. We have two streams within global media and communications. We have our journalism stream and we have our global media stream, and it's been very personalized here. I think our class is about a third of home students, as you term it, and about 2/3 of international students. It's a close cohort, and I understand what you're saying about that.
It's really important, actually, because I remember that within my own year mates at university. And, to be honest, I mean, one of the first senses was, who was on your dissection table, because there was like eight people there, and you were all grouped by alphabet. So, a lot of my friends had surnames beginning with B or maybe C, but it creates that connection and it creates that sense of belonging, which is a great base to kick on from.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and with that kind of a global class, we can also reflect on our own, theories and also our own practice in the home country as well.
Yeah.
Contrasting that kind of knowledge is very interesting.
Yeah. Agreed.
So I'm wondering, looking ahead, where would you see the university in the next 5 years? And when you look back, what would make you most proud of with the time here?
Oh my goodness, that's well. I did do an elevator pitch for my job, and I have used that pitch in a few different fora, but it was very much about being in New York in 7 years' time, which is the duration of my appointment. At least, hopefully, if I'm not sacked before then. And it was getting in the lift actually to go up with the chair of the governing authority to celebrate the university breaking into the top 200 in the QS World Rankings. And it isn't all about rankings. I'll be the first to admit that. But the reason we would be in there is that would be a marker, a surrogate, if you like, of excellence that we had achieved both on the research front and on the education front. I would really love that the students here, when you spoke with them, and I speak with them randomly, would say that they really enjoyed their experience and that it was, they felt listened to, they felt that they had a course that was very rewarding and that really equipped them for their future lives, rather than something that was being taught by rote and that wasn't really changing with the times. and that I would love, as I said before, to really know that if somebody did get into that lift and they said, you're from the University of Galway, you're well known for, they were able to rattle off the 4 areas, the pillars of strength that we have in terms of our research, and the impact that that research has made. And that I finally would really like to think that the university was known as a lighthouse, which is a phrase that the chair of the governing authority has used with myself, rather than an ivory tower, and that we'd switch the light on very brightly, and that working in partnership with other bodies here in the west of Ireland, particularly the likes of ATU, the City Council, the HSE, we had created an inward investment together for the infrastructure, which we badly need in this place, and that we've created a happier, healthier and wealthier population through a very functional academic health science system.
I am looking forward to that farewell speech in 7 years. I can't wait to hear all these points.
I hope so.
Thank you, Professor David Bernice. It was like a lovely chat with you today, and it's an honor to have you with us today, learning about your inspiring vision of belonging and community here in Galway and in the university. And I think that whether you are a new arrival or a lifelong member, you can still find that is home here. So thank you, audience, for listening, and stay tuned for more story connecting Galway with the world.
Thank you.
Thank you.